At a recent event, I had some nice examples of using the crossing to enter my opponent's measure safely and hit, and I'd like to discuss setting up and using the crossing through these examples. For context, this is a target and tactical priority rule set, so I need clean hits or a parry repost to take the pass. Also, I'm very tall. For this event, I was using a Siggy Mini, so my reach and ability to direct attack cleanly and safely from out of my opponent's measure was reduced from what it normally would be. This was forcing me to close to a closer measure than I normally would. However, the shorter sword length allowed for snappier reposts than what I'm used to, making the crossing an effective technique to use to enter measure and hit. Finally, with the crossing, you need to have a plan for what to do afterwards. Generally, either a retreat to avoid any afterblows or collapsing measure to stuff their afterblow in a grapple. Since my opponent is right-handed and in low von Tog on her dominant side, I know that whatever action she makes will be coming to my upper inside opening, and I can prepare my actions accordingly so I know where to place my sword to protect myself as I enter measure. First, I use a distance trap to get my opponent to close the gap a bit for me to make it easier for me to collapse measure and hit. I take one long retreating step to get her to chase me, and then a second short step. This way, her two normal steps bring her slightly closer to me than she might have chosen to be otherwise. When I begin my action, in this particular case, I can ignore the sword moves first rule and can move my sword and feet at the same time in the same tempo because my first action with my sword is preemptively addressing my opponent's sword. As my parry repost arrives, I take another passing step to bring myself to core with my opponent. This lets me stuff her hands up and back, preventing her from throwing an afterblow. I'm careful not to advance too far, because I'm pretty sure that my opponent will be taking an advancing step behind her cut, and I don't want to body slam her. I also need to be careful of what I do with my hands and arms as I push hers back and up, because I do not want to elbow my opponent in the face. I wanted to use the element of surprise in the next pass and decided to commit to an attack from long measure. I take a long first step with my back leg to close measure. The first step actually gets me to where I'd be able to hit from a normal stance with a lunge, which is perfect. I then use a stutter step to launch my attack, bringing my dominant foot forward with a passing step, but kicking it forward straight into a lunge as soon as it touches the ground. I was expecting and to some extent relying on sliding forwards on the lunge landing to bring me to core again without over-penetrating on my attack. Even though I'm making a very long action from wide measure, I'm still keeping it fairly controlled and non-ballistic for both my safety and my opponent's safety. While I am accepting that there will be a slide, I know that it will be slow, short, and I'll be maintaining my balance the whole time. I'm aiming to end just short of where my opponent would be if they took a step behind their cut, and that's where I end up. While the crossing is successful and I catch their initial attack, my opponent makes a really nice adjustment here and does not advance behind her cut this time. This gives her the time and space to renew her attack with a cut to the body. Fortunately for me, my action is a parry repost. Under this rule set, that gives my action tactical priority, giving me 2 points. This matchup was interesting. I had a measure disadvantage, which is rare for me, but it was a fun and interesting challenge. Whatever action I was able to either find or set up, I'd have to heavily commit to bridge the gap. You can see that when my opponent puts their point forward, I'm forced to retreat slightly and reassess the situation. I use a small retreating step to trigger my opponent's advance, and then use the stutter step again as the attack. I make a mistake here and do a full retreating step, moving my rear foot back, when I should have just narrowed my stance by drawing my lead foot back. The initial advance of the stutter step has the added benefit of drawing a chambering action of the sword from my opponent, which is perfect. Because I made a full retreat and not a half retreat by just slipping the lead foot, I can't get quite close enough on my attack to make it really clear to the judge on that side that the attack connects. The rotation that we do also doesn't help me here. I think that the way we spun made it less visible to the judge. Ah well, c'est la vie. I need to retreat at this point, since my chances of getting hit are pretty good, and my action would most likely be a renewal, which would lose me tactical priority in the pass. My opponent does a really nice job reading my attempted distance trap as we come back together and punishes it with a cut to the leg. I shouldn't have parried here since I would have won target priority on simultaneous attacks, but my attempted parry means that I abandoned my priority and my attack is out of tempo. This was the first Teams Relay event I've tried, and it was a lot of fun. You can see a link to the full video of that event in the description. Thanks to both of my opponents here for great matches and permission to use these passes to discuss the crossing in this video. In summary, the crossing was a great tool to enter measure, hit, and proceed from there as your inclination and preferences dictate, whether that be retreating, closing to grapple, or staying in the pocket and parry reposting your way through the next few actions. You can take several different approaches to footwork to set it up, and it's a really nice tool to have in your back pocket.